Welcome, dear brave listener. You're tuning in to Careful TV, and I'm truly grateful you're here. Whether you're tuning in during the day or late at night, thank you for choosing to spend a part of your time with me. If you enjoy these stories, don't forget to like the video and subscribe. It really helps the channel grow and means more than you know. I'd also love to hear from you in the comments. Tell me where you're watching from, what brought you here, or even what kind of story you'd like to hear next. Your support keeps this channel going, and I appreciate each and every one of you. Now, let's get into today's horror story. I'm at Home Depot in Amur. I haven't stepped foot inside one in over 15 years. Most people laugh when I say that. Like, really? A hardware store? But for me, it's not about the tools or the shelves stacked with lumber or even the overwhelming smell of mulch and paint thinner. It's about what happened to me there. You know how certain places hold a kind of imprint? Like, even if nothing has changed, the walls are the same, the layout's the same. Something inside you recoils when you get too close. That's what Home Depot is for me. This was back in 2009, I think. I was 11, right on the edge of middle school. Still young enough to be carted around with my parents. Too old to be entertained by free lollipops or core machines. It was a Saturday in June, warm enough that the pavement shimmered, and the kind of humid that makes the back of your knees stick. My parents were knee-deep in a kitchen remodel, which meant every weekend was spent bouncing between home improvement stores. Our local Home Depot was in Middletown, Connecticut, tucked into a plaza with a Petco and a Chinese buffet we used to go to after swim meets. That day, we pulled into the lot around noon. I remember because I had just finished begging my mom to let me stay home, and she gave me one of those tired looks and said, "We'll be in and out, I promise." Lies. I wore a loose blue tee and some frayed denim shorts. I remember fussing with the cuffs in the car, trying to roll them evenly. It wasn't anything flashy. I didn't even have on makeup yet. But you know how girls that age are. We're awkward and self-conscious and constantly pretending not to be. The second we stepped inside, I got hit with that usual Home Depot scent. Sawdust, garden soil, motor oil. It always felt like a warehouse that had forgotten it was pretending to be a store. My dad'd be lying for the paint department. My mom trailed behind, balancing a notebook full of measurements and swatches. I wandered a little, not too far, just enough to not be underfoot. I already knew the drill. Near the front registers, close to the seasonal displays, there was this tiny magazine stand. 4 racks, metal, squeaky, wedged between the customer service counter and a stack of impulse buy flashlights. It was clearly an afterthought, but for me, it was the only escape from 45 minutes of comparing grout colors. I shuffled through a couple boring titles, Popular Mechanics, Better Homes and Gardens, until I landed on a glossy issue of J14. Bright pink cover, giant bubble letters, photos of pop stars plastered all over it. Exactly the kind of stuff I pretended to be too cool for, but secretly devoured. I leaned against the rack and started flipping through it. There was this 2-page spread of celebrity crush confessions that made me smile. I was barely 5 minutes in when someone stepped up beside me. It was a man, maybe early 40s. Baseball cap, plain t-shirt, cargo shorts. Nothing remarkable. He crouched beside the rack, arms resting on his knees, flipping through something low on the shelf. I didn't think anything of it first. It was a public place. People browsed. But then I noticed what he was holding. It was a copy of Popstar, another teen magazine filled with band interviews and bubblegum gossip. Not exactly the kind of thing you expect a grown man to be interested in. Still, I tried to give him the benefit of the doubt. Maybe he had a kid. Maybe he was picking something out for a niece. But then, I realized he wasn't reading. The magazine was open in his hands, sure, but his eyes weren't on the pages. They were on me. More specifically, my legs. It took a moment for it to register. At first, I thought maybe I'd misunderstood. So I shifted my weight, angled my body, tried to block his view a little. But his gaze followed, like a beam of heat trailing my skin. My throat went dry. I suddenly felt very aware of the hem of my shorts, The gap between my knees, the fact that I was standing still while he stayed crouched. I remember thinking, am I imagining this? Because that's the first thing your brain does when something feels wrong. It tries to make it logical, dismiss it. But then he leaned, slow, subtle, like a stretch, like he was just trying to reach for a magazine on the bottom rack. But he wasn't. He angled his head and tilted his body in a way that made it clear. He was trying to look at my shorts. I froze. Every nerve in my body screamed to move, but my feet stayed glued to the floor for what felt like a full 10 seconds. My breath caught. My heart slammed against my ribs. And then, finally, I jumped back. Not a graceful move, more like a flinch. I dropped the magazine without even realizing it and backed away, so fast I bumped into the corner of a nearby pallet. He didn't say anything. He just blinked and stood up slowly, turning toward the aisle like nothing had happened. Like he hadn't just made me feel like I was about 2 inches tall and completely exposed. I turned on my heel and walked away, fast but not frantic. I didn't want to run. I didn't want anyone to look. But my hands were shaking as I rounded the corner into the flooring aisle. I spotted my parents halfway through a debate about ceramic tile. My mom looked up and saw my face and immediately asked what was wrong. I told her I had a stomachache. I want to leave. She sighed and said we'd be quick. I stayed right next to them after that. I didn't wonder. I didn't even look up for my shoes. But as we moved from one aisle to another, I kept seeing him. At the lighting section, the bathroom fixtures, the outdoor grills. He was never too close. Always a few aisles away, pretending to browse. But I felt it, his eyes. At some point, my mom noticed too. She nudged my dad. Quiet words passed between them. I caught the edge of my dad's voice as he said, "That guy been following us?" I just nodded. We left not long after that. My mom placed a half-full shopping basket down near a display of succulents and said she'd come back for it later. My dad kept a hand on my shoulder the whole way to the door. As we stepped into the parking lot, I turned back and saw the man exit the store. He didn't look at us. He just kept walking toward the far end of the lot. I scanned the cars, trying to spot where he was going, but I didn't see him get into anything. He just sort of disappeared into the rows of vehicles. I climbed into the back seat and crouched low, watching out the window until we pulled out of the lot. I didn't tell them everything until years later. About the way he crouched, about what he was really doing, about the feeling of his eyes crawling on my skin like insects. I didn't have the vocabulary for it back then. All I had was a nauseating sense of wrongness and a deep, pulsing shame I couldn't shake. For a long time after, I couldn't wear shorts without thinking of that day. I hated that they made me feel visible, vulnerable, like I was asking for attention I didn't want. I flinched whenever someone stood too close behind me in line. I avoided walking through parking lots alone. I stopped going anywhere that felt too big, too open, too easy for someone to slip into your periphery unnoticed. And I stopped on a Home Depot. It's irrational, I know. That building didn't do anything. But to me, it holds a memory etched into its tile floors and concrete walls. A memory of being a child, made to feel like an object. A moment where innocence got peeled back without my permission. To anyone else, it's just a store. To me, it's a scar, and I'm not interested in reopening it. It was a Saturday afternoon in late September, the kind that feels like summer is finally giving up. My mom and I had just finished walking around a half-dead strip mall in Topeka, Kansas, mostly just to kill time. She wanted to look for curtains or something boring like that, and I tagged along because I had nothing better to do. I was around 9 or 10 at the time, one of those ages where you're old enough to start noticing weird stuff, but still young enough that adults don't really take it seriously when you point it out. My name's Melissa, by the way. This story's been bouncing around in my head for years now, and I've never really known how to talk about it without sounding dramatic. Nothing technically happened, but it still feels like a bad dream that almost came true. We were parked a few rows down from a Michael's, loading some craft supplies into the truck. The parking lot was cracked and wide open. One of those old school layouts where the sun reflects off everything and makes your eyes hurt. That's when a woman walked up to us. Alone, a little sweaty, maybe in her late 30s. She had a limp, noticeable but not dramatic. Her blonde hair was pulled back into a messy ponytail, and she kept tugging at the hem of her hoodie like she was trying to hide something underneath. She smiled a little too quickly. "Hi. Sorry to bother you. My car's at the Home Depot just down the road, but I ran out of gas and my phone's dead. I was wondering if you could give me a quick ride." It was weird. Not terrifying. Not yet. But weird. My mom blinked a couple times, looked around like someone else was in a step in and solve it for her. "Home Depot? You mean the one off 29th? The woman hesitated, then nodded. Yeah, that's the one. It's right there. I parked near the back by the garden center. I just need to grab a gas can." There were two problems with that. First, the Home Depot wasn't right there. It was about a mile away across a massive highway, with no safe walkway. And second, her story kept changing. She said she needed to grab a gas can, but then she said her friend had one waiting for her. Then she mentioned AAA, but said they needed her to get to her car first. It didn't add up. I felt this slow heat crawling up my neck, the kind you get when something feels off and you can't explain why. I looked to my mom, waiting for her to say no, but she just looked conflicted. "I don't usually give strangers a ride," she said, not unkindly. "But it's pretty hot out. You sure it's just over at Home Depot?" "Yeah, promise," the woman said, her voice shaking a little. I'd walk, but my legs kind of messed up, and it's been a long day. I'm not a bad person, I swear. Just down on my luck. That line stuck with me for some reason. I think because it was too preemptive. Like she was trying to head off a fear she already knew we had. My mom looked at me, then back at her. "Okay, but just to the lot. That's all." She nodded, her smile twitching into something almost relieved. I moved toward the car reluctantly and opened the back door. I accidentally knocked my tote bag to the ground and took my time picking everything up. I made sure it looked like I was struggling to zip it. I was stalling, but I don't think I understood why just yet. The woman got in the front passenger seat, folding her hands in her lap, bouncing one foot slightly. My mom started the engine. I could feel my stomach twisting into knots I couldn't untie. Something about the way the woman was breathing, too fast, too shallow, made it feel like she was psyching herself up for something. As we pulled out of the lot, I watched her from behind, and something clicked. She wasn't limping anymore. That limp she had walking up, gone. Her posture was fine. She turned toward my mom and started talking again. Only this time, her story had shifted. I think I might have said the wrong street. "It's not 29th, it's more like, no wait, sorry, it is 29th. Sorry, my head's everywhere today." My mom smiled politely, but I saw her knuckles go white on the steering wheel. We were less than 2 minutes into the drive, and already something felt wrong. The air in the car felt tighter, like the windows were shrinking inward. I finally said something. "Hey Mom, I forgot I left my water bottle back at the store. Can we go back real quick?" It was a lie, and it was a terrible lie, but I just wanted her to stop the car. The woman turned around and looked at me, dead in the eye. Her expression didn't match the smile on her lips. "It's fine, honey. We'll be quick. You can grab it after." The way she said honey made my skin crawl. We kept driving, just another few blocks, but it felt like we were heading into a tunnel with no exit. We hadn't hit the turn off yet, and my mom slowed down slightly like she was second-guessing the whole thing. Then we heard a short burst of siren, 2 quick whoops, and a police cruiser flashed its lights behind us. My mom pulled over immediately. I looked out the window and saw a tall cop step out of the car, walk over to my mom's window, and lean down slightly. His voice was calm but sharp. "Ma'am, everything okay in here?" The woman in the front seat stiffened. "Yes," my mom said, blinking. "We're just giving her a ride to the Home Depot." He looked past her at the woman, who avoided eye contact. Then he straightened up and said, "Step out of the vehicle, ma'am." "What?" she said, startled. "What? Step out." Now, the next few minutes blurred. She got out reluctantly, tried to say something about not doing anything wrong. The officer took her aside and started talking to her, low and serious. Another car pulled up, and a second officer joined them. We sat in the car with the engine off, the AC slowly fading into silence. Eventually, the officer came back to my mom's window. "She's been doing this in different areas for a while now," he said. "Claims her car's out of gas, asks for rides, sometimes tries to get money out of people or take stuff from their cars. Nothing violent so far, but not exactly safe either. It was smart of you to stay in public and keep the drive short." My mom just nodded, tight-lipped. She said she was hurt. He raised his eyebrows. "Yeah, she always says that." She was gone by the time we turned around, either walked off or was picked up. I never found out. We didn't talk much on the way home. I remember the silence more than anything, that heavy, awkward quiet that fills in when something could have gone wrong but didn't. Like we were still waiting for the other shoe to drop, even though it never would. I kept thinking about how easily we said yes, how polite my mom tried to be, how I had a weird gut feeling but didn't know how to explain it without sounding like a brat, and how she walked just fine once the act was up. It wasn't a horror story. No blood, no screaming, but it changed how I saw people, how I trusted them. Sometimes the scariest thing is how close you get to danger without even knowing it. I still can't walk through that strip mall parking lot without thinking of her face. How fast her voice changed when she was caught. How quick the limp disappeared. How something didn't feel right from the start. And how lucky we were that someone showed up before it was too late. It was a Thursday. I remember that specifically because I just finished work early and was looking forward to a quiet evening at home. My wife had wanted to make a planter box for her back porch, something simple. So we drove out together to the Home Depot over on 82nd Street in Lubbock. Not the fanciest part of town, but it was familiar. Safe even. It was around 6 p.m., sun still up, air warm enough that the blacktop shimmered a little when you looked at it from the wrong angle. We weren't in any kind of rush, and everything felt calm in that dull, end-of-day sort of way. I remember thinking about what we'd have for dinner. Chicken tacos, probably. That's what we planned. The trip itself was uneventful. We parked, went inside, grabbed a couple of cedar planks, a bag of soil, and one of those pre-mixed buckets of plant food. My wife, Kara, joked about picking up a chainsaw. She always says dumb stuff like that in stores just to get a reaction out of me. We left through the garden center and packed everything into the back of our van. Kara tossed the receipt in the glove compartment and said, "I want something cool before we head home." Gas station. I nodded. The gas station was just across the street. Not a major road, but enough traffic that you had to wait for a break before turning out. We rolled through the light, made a right, and pulled into the Exxon station next to an old pawn shop with busted signage. Kara parked and said, "You want anything?" "Nah, just water," I mumbled, already flipping open my phone. She stepped out, locked the doors with a beep, and walked inside. I remember watching her go through the glass, then going back to my feed. Just dumb videos. Nothing important. Maybe 2 minutes passed, maybe 3. Then I heard it. A soft, metallic clack. I thought at first someone had leaned on the van, or maybe bumped it with their door, psych lights on my right. And there he was, standing outside my passenger side window. Just there, no knock, no wave. He was trying the door handle. I blinked. My brain stuttered for a second because nothing about it made sense. He didn't look threatening. Late 40s maybe, clean clothes. No slouch or twitchiness that would scream drugs or desperation. Just a guy, neatly shaven, pale. His shirt looked freshly ironed. He didn't look like someone who'd be casing a vehicle, but he kept his hand on the door, and he was looking directly at me. I sat still, didn't move, didn't lower the window. I just said through the glass, "Can I help you?" He didn't flinch, just motioned with a subtle hand gesture, like turning a crank, telling me to roll the window down. I stayed where I was. "What do you want?" I asked again, louder this time. He tapped the glass with his knuckle. 1, 2, 3. Not hard, just enough to punctuate the silence. Then he did the same thing. Motioned for me to roll it down. No, I said more firmly. What do you want? He didn't respond, just stared at me, face unreadable, then slowly walked around the front of the van and out of view. I sat up straighter, heart thumping now. My hand went to the lock even though I'd heard it engage earlier. I pressed it again anyway, just to be sure. I twisted in my seat and watched him through the rear window. He walked around to the back of the van, pulled out his phone, and snapped a photo of the license plate. And then, without a word, he walked away. He didn't run, didn't jog, just walked toward a black Nissan sedan parked 2 lanes over. The car wasn't there when we pulled in. I would have noticed it. It must have come in just after Kara went inside. I watched him get into the driver's seat. A woman sat in the passenger side, maybe his wife or girlfriend. She didn't move. She didn't turn to look at him. She just stared ahead, hand in her lap, eyes fixed on the lot. They pulled out slowly, like nothing had happened. The turn signal clicked. The car slid onto the road and disappeared past the light. By the time Kara came out with her drink and a little bag of chips, they were long gone. I told her what happened, and she went still. He tried to open the door, she asked, like she hadn't heard me right. Yeah, I said, calmly, then took a photo of the plate. She looked around the lot, scanning the edges. You think he meant to do something? I don't know. I said truthfully, I really don't. The rest of the ride home was quiet. We didn't play music. Didn't talk about dinner, just sat in this weird vacuum of unfinished tension, both of us trying to understand what it meant. The next day, I called the non-emergency line for the police. The guy on the other end took down the info, asked if I had any photos or plate numbers, which I didn't. He said it could have been a mistaken identity, maybe a weird scam, maybe nothing. Call us back if anything happens, he said. But something had happened. I couldn't shake the feeling. I kept thinking, what if the doors weren't locked? What if I'd rolled the window down? What if Kara had stayed in the car and I'd gone inside? It's the quietness that makes it worse. He didn't shout, didn't beg, didn't try to explain himself. He acted like someone who already knew what they were doing. And that woman with him, the way she stared forward like she'd done this before, like this wasn't a surprise, still rattles me. It's not the fear of violence that lingers. It's the uncertainty, the potential, the feeling that someone got close enough to change everything and then didn't. And maybe it was nothing. Maybe he really thought it was his car. Maybe he got confused. But I keep coming back to the way he stared at me. Blank, focused, not like someone confused about where they parked. I started double-checking our locks every night. Made sure Kara didn't go anywhere alone for a while. I even installed the dash cam the next day. I told myself it was just for peace of mind, but really, it was for proof. For the next time. Because deep down, I don't think that was a one-off. I think we crossed paths with someone who's done this before. And next time, it might not end so quietly. I think what haunts me most is how ordinary it all looked. Just another parking lot. Just another Saturday. Nothing about that day felt like a warning. It was March 2nd, 2019. Cool but sunny. I remember that clearly because my cousin Danielle was annoyed. She had to wear her heavier coat when we left the house. She hated bulk. Always preferred hoodies and fingerless gloves, even when it was freezing. We lived in Missoula, Montana, and she'd been staying with me and my mom for a couple weeks, trying to get back on her feet. Danielle was 35, smart as hell when she wanted to be, but life never really gave her a break. She had a daughter back east, but things had been tense for years. That weekend, she said she wanted to grab a few things at Home Depot and try her hand at building a shelf for her bucks. Something to keep herself busy. I offered to go with her, but she insisted she'd be fine. I'll take the bus, it's not a big deal, she said, already sipping her bag. You don't need to babysit me. I should have pushed harder. I really should have. My name's Look. I was 22 at the time, and honestly, just relieved she was trying something productive again. The last few months have been rough for her. Bad breakup, lost her job, no real direction. She bounced between couches until my mom said she could stay with us for a bit. We thought giving her some space, some quiet, might help her reset, and it did, for a little while. She was starting to laugh again, cooking dinners, reading at night. She even talked about getting a part-time gig at the grocery store down the street. That day felt like progress. She left a little after noon, waved, made a joke about getting lost in the lumber aisle. She said she might pick up a sandwich from that deli near the corner on her way back. It was supposed to be a short trip, in and out, but she never came home. By 6 p.m., I started getting nervous. I called her twice, no answer. I figured maybe her phone had died or she'd stopped somewhere else. But when it hit 9, I knew something was wrong. Danielle always checked in. Even at her worst, she never just disappeared. We called the police that night, filed a missing persons report the next morning. The detective we spoke with said they'd put out an alert, but didn't seem overly concerned at first. Adults have the right to disappear, they said. That line stuck with me in the worst way. It felt like they were already chalking her up to a lost cause. Like her history meant she didn't deserve urgency. We called hospitals, shelters, anywhere that might have seen her. Nothing. No one even remembered her walking through the deli doors. Every time the phone rang, I jumped. Every text made my stomach drop. But nothing ever led anywhere. It wasn't until a week later that we found out she had made it to Home Depot. The detective called us down to the station to view footage. The room was small, sterile, with humming fluorescent lights. They pulled up the security video and played it in silence. There she was, walking through the sliding doors at 12:48 p.m., bundled in her tan coat, carrying her old black purse with the fraying strap. She looked normal, focused, not anxious. She moved with intention, even smiled briefly at someone in an orange apron. There was a second clip too. At 1:32 p.m., she exited the building, empty-handed, walking toward the edge of the lot. Her pace had slowed. She stood near the contractor pickup lane, looking down the row like she was waiting for something. Then a dark gray SUV, maybe a Ford or a Hyundai, rolled up alongside her. You can't see much detail, but it circled the aisle once before stopping. She hesitated, looked like she was talking to someone in the vehicle. Then she stepped off the curb and got in on the passenger side. That was it. No follow-up footage. No plate. No clear view of the driver. The camera's angle barely caught the back half of the SUV as it pulled out toward the exit. I stared at that screen until the detective turned it off. We asked if there were other angles. A better camera. Something. Anything. The officer said they'd try to enhance the image, but warned us not to expect much. We're putting out a public appeal, he said. Maybe someone will recognize the vehicle. Weeks passed. Then months. Nothing. No calls. No tips that led anywhere. They never identified the driver. Never found the SUV. Danielle's phone never pinged another tower. Her bank account stayed untouched. Her email went silent. It was like she stepped off the curb and into a void. Her daughter, Casey, flew out from Vermont a few weeks later. She was only 19, and even though their relationship had been strained, she was broken by the silence. She would have called me, she said through tears, even just to say she wasn't ready to come back. She would have said something. That summer, we held a small vigil in the park. Candles, photos, memories shared in broken sentences. It didn't feel like closure. It felt like surrender. I still remember what my mom said that night. She whispered it like it was too heady to say out loud. She was trying. She was trying, Luke. Why now? That's what gutted me the most. Danielle wasn't lost. She wasn't spiraling. She was making small steps forward. And someone stole that from her. I kept checking the news, refreshing forums, setting Google alerts. Every time a body was found, I braced myself. And every time it wasn't her, I felt that awful blend of relief and guilt. You start rewinding every moment, every chance you miss to say something. What if I'd gone with her? What if I'd driven her? What if I just insisted? What if that SUV hadn't circled first? Was it random? Or had she met the driver before? Sometimes I replay the footage in my head. That pause at the curb, that moment of decision, that step toward the door. What do they say? What do they promise? And what do they do after she got in? I don't believe she left willingly. She wouldn't have gone off the grid on purpose. Not without telling someone. That wasn't who she was. Months later, I started driving by that Home Depot after work. Just once or twice a week. The parking lot looked the same. Same cracked pavement. Same faded cart corral. Same row where she stood in that last image. I parked a few spaces back and watched the people coming and going. Men loading plywood. Couples arguing over paint colors. Teenagers with summer jobs wrangling carts. Life moved on, but that row stayed still in my mind. The police eventually stopped updating us. We'll contact you if anything new comes in. That was over 2 years ago. I remember sitting in her room late one night, flipping through her notebook. She always jotted things down, grocery lists, quotes she liked, quick sketches. There was a page that just said, "You can't outrun it, but you can outgrow it." I don't know what she meant. Maybe it was about the past. Maybe it was about hope. I held that page for a long time. We still keep her photo on the fridge. The one from her 30th birthday. Holding a sparkler, mid-laugh. You can almost hear it if you stare long enough. There are no updates. No suspects. No new footage. Danielle's case is still listed as missing. Not suspicious. Just gone. But I know better. People don't vanish like that unless someone makes them vanish. I've gotten used to the not knowing. Doesn't mean I've accepted it. Just means I've learned how to live with the noise. The kind that hums behind everyday moments. The kind that never quite stops. Sometimes I wonder if the driver of that SUV ever thinks about her. Do they remember that day? That pause on the curb? That choice? Or is she just another shadow to them? Another name they hope never gets found? And sometimes I wonder if she hesitated, if she felt in her gut, if she thought, even for a second, about walking away. But then the door opened, and she stepped inside. That's all it takes. It wasn't anything dramatic. No one said anything to me. No one touched me, at least not in a way that could be called aggressive. And yet, I still think about it days later, how it all unfolded so quietly, how close it probably came to something else entirely. My name's Callie. I live in Rio Rancho, New Mexico, just outside Albuquerque. My husband and I have been going back and forth between hardware stores the past few weeks. Typical new house stuff. We were in the final stages of moving into a new build, and since the drywall hadn't gone up yet, he wanted to install some upgraded data cabling and hide power lines behind where the wall-mounted TV would go. It's his thing, not mine. But I like being the one who picks out all the little finishings. The plates, screws, fasteners. Because at least then I feel like I've contributed something beyond paperwork and paint colors. That weekend we were already planning a visit my mom who lives across town, so I suggested we stop at the Home Depot closer to her place. I used to live in that area years ago and knew that store like the back of my hand. Figured it'd be faster than wandering aimlessly through a different location. What I didn't factor in was how much the neighborhood had changed. It used to feel middle of the road. Nothing fancy, but nothing sketchy either. Now there were panhandlers on most corners, and the windows on the Walgreens near the freeway were lined with security film. Mom had been talking about moving for months now. Said she didn't feel as safe anymore, especially after the car break-in last winter. Still, I wasn't worried. It was daylight, and Home Depot is the kind of place where people are constantly walking around with carts full of lumber. It doesn't exactly scream danger. We pulled in just after 1. My husband stayed in the car, double-checking a list he made on his phone. I told him I'd be quick, just faceplates and some Tava bolts, maybe a roll of Romex if I could find a right gauge. The store felt normal at first. Busy but not crowded. I headed toward the aisle with electrical boxes, found the faceplates, and started counting out what I needed. 14 total. I stacked them slowly, trying to make sure I didn't grab the wrong type. I didn't notice anything strange at first. There were a couple other people in the aisle, an older man loading conduit into his cart, and a woman comparing outlets nearby. I wasn't paying close attention, but then, out of nowhere, this wave of anxiety hit me. Fast and deep, like the air had shifted. It wasn't caused by anything obvious. No one said anything. No one looked at me funny. It was just this sudden, clawing dread that told me I needed to get out of that aisle immediately. I dropped to the faceplates, fumbled to scoop them back up, and just shoved the entire stack into my cart without finishing the count. Then I turned and walked off, fast like I was late for something. My heart was racing, and I didn't know why. I kept thinking, maybe it was just an anxiety flare-up. They happen. Maybe someone nearby triggered it subconsciously, and I just wasn't aware of it. That makes sense, right? I made my way over to the wire section and found the roll of cable we needed. Still felt shaky, but was trying to breathe through it. I told myself I was being dramatic, that nothing was wrong. The feeling started to fade a little. I was even considering going back to double-check the faceplates when it happened. A man brushed past me, hard enough to shift my balance. He didn't say anything, didn't apologize, just kept walking, and I wouldn't have thought anything of it except for how close he got. The entire aisle was wide open, and yet he passed me with inches to spare. My peripheral vision was limited by my mask and glasses, so I didn't catch his face, but I saw the shirt, a light blue plaid button-up. That detail stuck in my head. I didn't want to cause a scene. I mean, what could I even say? The guy walked too close to me. Still, I left the aisle. I grabbed the toggle bolts quickly and headed for the self-checkout lanes. At this point, I just wanted to be done. My gut was back in panic mode, like it knew something I didn't. I paid for my stuff and pushed the cart out toward the lot. The sun was still out. Everything looked normal. I spotted our car and felt a little better once I saw my husband still inside, scrolling on his phone. I loaded the truck and got in, and the first thing I said was, "Let's just go." He looked up. "You okay?" "Yeah, just let's go." But we couldn't leave yet because I still needed a few things from Smith's, the grocery store in the same plaza. So I told him to hang tight, and I'd be quick. He offered to come, but I waved him off. No big deal. Smith's was uneventful. I was in and out in less than 10 minutes. Milk, some granola bars, a thing of pasta. The usual. I paid with my card, bagged everything myself, and walked back across the lot. That's when I noticed it. Parked directly in front of our car was an older Toyota, dull black paint, tan interior, faded bumper sticker. Inside were two men. One of them was wearing a light blue plaid shirt. They were looking at me, pointing. I froze for half a second before forcing myself to keep walking. I didn't make eye contact. Just got in, shut the door, and locked it. I didn't say anything at first. My husband looked over at me. "What's wrong?" "That's the same car from Home Depot," I said, trying to sound more curious than shaken. "Same guy in the plaid." He leaned forward to get a better look, but the Toyota had already started backing out, turning slow like they weren't in a hurry. The guy in plaid looked over at us one last time before they pulled out of the lot and disappeared down the road. Neither of us said much on the drive home. I kept thinking about how subtle it all was. There were no threats, no obvious confrontation, but I knew they followed me. I knew that same car had been parked near me at Home Depot, and I knew that I had walked too close. These weren't coincidences. Maybe they were waiting for me to be alone. Maybe they were trying to see if I'd panic. Maybe I interrupted whatever plan they had just by not being alone. The scariest part is that no one would have believed me if I hadn't remembered that shirt. That small, specific detail gave the whole thing weight. Something to hang on to when everything else felt slippery. I filed a report when we got home, gave the make and model, tried to describe a guy as best I could. The officer was polite, but didn't sound too hopeful. "Could be coincidence," he said, "but you did the right thing reporting it." They always say that, but it doesn't do much for peace of mind. Since then, I double-check locks more than I used to. I park closer to entrances. I avoid shopping alone when I can help it. And sometimes when I see an old Toyota in traffic or a guy in a blue plaid shirt at a gas station, I feel my stomach twist up all over again. I tell myself it's probably nothing. But my gut still whispers the same warning it did that day. You were marked. This wasn't the first time someone made me feel unsafe at work, but it's definitely the one that stuck with me the longest. I try not to let stuff get to me. I've worked in customer-facing jobs since I was 16, but some encounters just hit different. They linger, even after the shift ends. My name's Bailey. I'm 18 and work customer service at a Home Depot, just outside of Rockford, Illinois. It's my third job, but the first one I've actually liked. Good crew, decent pay, and they treat me like I'm matter, which is more than I can say for some of the places I've worked. Still, you don't need to be anywhere fancy to have something creepy happen. Sometimes, all it takes is being in the wrong aisle at the wrong time, or the wrong return desk. It started around 6 in the evening. I was on returns, sorting through some mismatched inventory and trying to catch up before the rush hit. I'd barely been on the clock for an hour when this guy rolls up with one of our oversized lumber carts. It was loaded with busted, rotting, half-split wood, stuff that looked like it had been sitting in a barn for 5 years. My gut reaction was already screaming no, but I smiled and did the usual. Hey there, you had your receipt with you. He was sweating, like pouring, and not from exertion. He wiped his forehead with the back of his hand and muttered something about losing it. I offered to help anyway, because that's what we do, and I unlocked the chain so I could scan the items from my side. 2 boards in, I realized something was off. The pressure-treated planks weren't even in our system. I checked the database twice. Nothing. They weren't from our store. I told him politely, hey, just so you know, a few of these aren't coming up, which usually means they weren't purchased here. But if you got the card you used, I can check your transaction history. He furrowed his brow and shook his head. His English was broken, but it wasn't the language barrier that bothered me. It was the intensity, the way he leaned in, the way he hovered behind me while I scanned. Like I'd opened a door to let him in, and he didn't know where to stop. I explained that we couldn't return items that weren't in the system where they were damaged. That some of the wood just wasn't salvageable. He kept insisting it was all from Home Depot. I gave him a benefit of the doubt and said, okay, if you can find one of the same items on the floor, I can scan that. I mostly just wanted a few minutes to breathe. While he was gone, I told my coworkers he gave me the creeps. Not in a funny, haha way, in a serious way. I don't usually say that unless I mean it. He came back faster than I expected, found a match for 1 board, and I moved through the process as quickly as I could. I printed his return receipt and said, all set, just need a signature here. That's when he froze. No sign, no card, he said. I told him that was fine, but if we couldn't verify the card, we'd need ID for a manual return. Standard procedure. He hesitated again, then slowly pulled out his wallet. His hands were shaking. I glanced at the license. Toronto. Not anywhere near Rockford. At least a 4-hour drive. I logged his info and issued a store credit card for a little over $400. I handed him the slip, and he left. I joked with the cashier afterward about how weird it was, to try to let the tension out of my chest. We closed at 10. By 9:55, guess who rolls back in? Same guy, same sweat, different card. This time, his stuff made even less sense. Bottled water, duct tape, some random power tool, rope, a heavy interior door. None of it added up, and instead of heading to a regular checkout, he stood at the customer service lane, my lane. A couple other cashiers offered to help him, but he didn't move, just stared. I could feel his eyes on me even while I rang out someone else. Eventually, he made it to my register. I rang up everything as fast as I could, trying not to make eye contact. He leaned on the counter, closer than anyone should. Then he said, what time you finish? I looked at the clock. Home Depot closes at 10. It's 9:58 now. No, he said, firmer. What time you done? I fell out of my stomach. That twist. I'm not sure. I lied. He slapped his hand down on the counter. Not hard enough to call attention, but enough for me to feel it through the surface. My hands shook. I made up an excuse about needing to check on a paint return and left the desk. Paint is all the way on the other side of the store, and I walked there fast, try not to look back. At 10:05, I peeped down the aisle. He was still at the front, just standing, waiting. I ducked behind a shower display and pulled aside one of the floor guys. New kid from plumbing. I asked him to check if the man was still at the doors. He came back a couple minutes later and nodded. Yeah, he's out there, still looking in. I didn't go back up right away. I waited a few more minutes, then crept forward when I saw my head cashier. I told her everything. Right then, another associate said casually, "Oh yeah, he told me to tell you to meet him at the Home Depot van when you're done." I blinked. "What?" "Yeah," she said. "He asked for you by name. Said he had a question for you. Told me to tell you to meet him at the van." I hadn't told him my name. My name tag is small and covered by my hair most of the time. He must have leaned in, watched, studied. That made my skin crawl. The rest of the closing crew took it seriously. Thank God. My manager called an emergency huddle. The whole team escorted each other out, 2 by 2. No one left alone. Someone stood at each exit. I stayed inside, waiting for my dad to arrive. He was already pulling into the lot when we saw the van, parked close to the doors. Lights off, engine running. I told the cashier beside me, "That's it. That's the one." The van started to pull out when the others walked out with me, but it didn't leave. It circled behind a car corral and sat there, hidden, but still watching. When my dad pulled up, I used the store phone call him, explained what happened, told him be careful. He pulled up next to the van, rolled down his window, and tried to get a look at the driver. When the guy realized what he was doing, he swerved his van directly in my dad's car. Tried to ram him. My dad's quick, got out of the way, but it shook us both. The van peeled off, but my dad followed long enough to snap a shot of the plates. Just before I ran outside, one of the male floor associates was talking to the guy in the van. When asked what he wanted, the guy claimed he'd bought gifts for me. Refused to say what they were. Wouldn't show anything. I remembered his purchase. Rope, tape, and bottled water. That didn't feel like a gift. The next day, the entire store was talking about it. HR got involved. Security protocols changed. I got pulled into a meeting where they made it very clear they'd be taking steps to make sure it didn't happen again. It helped a little, but I still flinch when a customer lingers too long. I check parking lots more closely now. I leave in pairs or not at all. And every time I see a Home Depot van on the road, my chest tightens. Because you never really know what someone means when they say they have a question for you. And sometimes, being polite can feel like a trap. It happened late last fall, maybe early November. The days were shorter, and even though it wasn't technically that late, it already felt like night. I had just gotten off work and decided to stop by Home Depot on my way home. I needed a new outlet plate for the wall behind my desk and a couple of things for a light fixture I was trying to install. Nothing urgent, just one of those quick errands you don't think twice about. My name's Leah. I live in Eugene, Oregon, and I usually feel pretty safe running errands alone. I've always been careful, always aware of my surroundings, but nothing had ever really happened before. Not like this. Not in a place as plain and fluorescent as Home Depot. It was just after 9 p.m. when I parked. Store was open until 10. The lot was mostly empty, and I remember thinking it was kind of nice how quiet it was. Inside, it was even quieter. Barely anyone around except for a few employees and a couple customers scattered in the distance. That eerie, echoey feeling of being in a huge store with no sound. I remember the floors squeaking under my sneakers and the fluorescent lights humming above me, louder than usual, just because there was no one talking. As I made my way toward the electrical aisle, I passed a small group, 2 men and a woman, loitering near the seasonal section. One of the guys said something as I walked by. "Hey, I like your jacket." I glanced back, gave a quick smile. "Thanks," I said. He nodded like that was all he needed, but I noticed the woman with him leaned in a little and whispered something. I didn't catch it. It didn't feel important in the moment. I moved on. About 10 minutes later, I turned into one of the aisles. Don't even remember which one now. And there they were again. The same three. One of the men, the one who complimented me, was blocking the path with his body. Not standing in the middle casually, but deliberately. I hadn't heard them coming. They were just there. He extended his hand. Hey, we didn't get to introduce ourselves. It wasn't said in a rude tone. He was smiling. Normal clothes. Tan jacket. He looked like the type of guy who drives a pickup and listens to classic rock. The woman was standing behind him, and next to her was the other man. Taller, thinner, and filthy. I don't mean dusty from work. I mean caked in dirt. His hair was long, tangled, his eyes wide and too bright. His jeans were stiff with grime. His hands were black, not like he forgot to wash them, but like he hadn't in days. He looked like someone pulled straight from the backwoods, but not in a folksy, harmless way. More like unhinged. The first guy gestured to the dirty one. This here's Micah. He loves girls named Sarah. Say your name. I was startled. No, it's Leah, I said before I could stop myself. I don't know why I answered. Just reflex, I guess. I hate that I did. He smiled wider. Leah? That's close enough. Shake his hand, Leah. The dirty man stared at me, breathing through his mouth. His chest heaved just slightly, like he was too excited for something that hadn't happened yet. I hesitated. Everything in my body was screaming no, but I reached out anyway. His hand was sticky and cold. I wanted to pull away the second we touched. He didn't grip tight, but the contact made me feel like I needed to wash my skin with bleach. He looked me up and down, slowly, and licked his bottom lip. She's from around here, Micah. She's probably a student, right? The woman chimed in. Her tone was syrupy, but her eyes were flat. Empty. Yeah, I stammered. Actually, I need to grab something before they close. The man wouldn't move. You go to U of O. I didn't answer. Were you heading next? He asked. That's when my nerves hit full tilt. Not even trying to be subtle. Just asking where I was going, like it was totally normal. Before I could figure out how to respond, the woman giggled and said, She's probably going back to her little apartment. Right, sweetie? I laughed lightly. Yeah, maybe. Gotta run. Excuse me. And I squeezed past them before they could say another word. I turned the corner and ditched everything in my cart. I speed walked toward the front of the store, heart hammering. I told myself to stay calm, not to run, not to show fear. I didn't even stop to look behind me. I just wanted out. I walked fast, straight to the front entrance, and through the self-checkout lanes like I'd forgotten something in my car. I could feel someone watching me. It felt hot, crawling, like I wasn't alone, even though I couldn't hear anyone following. As I exited the store, I saw the woman, same one, leaving through the opposite set of doors. She walked directly toward a black SUV, idling in one of the front spaces. She pulled out her phone and made a call, staring at me. She didn't look away when our eyes met. She didn't smile. She just stood there, phone her ear, mouth moving slowly. Her eyes were locked on mine, like she was waiting for something to happen. My entire chest locked up. I jumped in my car and locked the doors before starting the engine. I sat there for a second, staring at the wheel, trying to decide what to do. She was still standing near the SUV, talking, watching. The way she stood was strange, like she wasn't just a shopper or someone making a call. She was angled toward me, fully present. I reversed out fast, didn't wait to see what she did. I circled the lot before turning onto the main road, checking my mirrors the whole time. I took side streets home, circled the block twice before finally pulling into my complex. No one followed, but I didn't sleep well that night. For the next few days, I replayed the whole thing over and over. The hand blocking my path, the handshake, the question about where I was going, the way they coordinated with each other without saying they were coordinating, the woman appearing at the exit, the call, the SUV. It felt deliberate. I talked myself in circles. Maybe they were just weird. Maybe I overreacted. But then I'd think about the way they try to get personal information, The way they stood like they were guiding a conversation. The way they acted like they knew what I'd say. And most of all, how they made me feel. That's the part that stuck. Because I've had odd run-ins before. Awkward customers. Catcalls. Drunk strangers asking for directions. But this felt like something else. Something planned. Something practiced. The store didn't have enough cameras to catch everything. I asked the front desk a few days later if they had footage near the electrical aisles. I didn't report anything specific. Just said I thought someone was following me around and made me uncomfortable. The guy behind the desk said he'd take a note, said they'd be more vigilant. But that was it. No names. No report. I didn't even know how to describe what happened. They blocked me in an aisle and asked weird questions. Doesn't exactly get prioritized in a system built for hard evidence. I had to tell a couple of friends though. They all said the same thing. It sounds like they were trying to grab you. One of them said, if you hadn't gotten away when you did, they might have tried to follow you to your car. I think about that now every time I'm walking out of store alone at night. I changed my habits after that. I stopped going out late. I stopped walking through empty aisles when I can avoid it. I carry pepper spray. And I always check the back seat before I get in my car now. And I never, ever tell people my real name. Sometimes I still think about their faces, especially the one they called Micah. The way he looked at me, not like a person, but like a thing, like I was already marked for something he'd been planning. And I think about the woman, how calm she was, how she smiled when she said, right, sweetie, like it was all some game. I'll never know what their plan was, if there was a plan. But that's what makes it worse. Because if they'd done it before, and it felt like they had, then maybe next time it works. Maybe next time, the person doesn't walk away. And the only reason I did was because I listened to my gut. I got out of there. But the memory, that's still following me. This happened a couple years ago. Maybe a little before everything started shutting down. I was still in high school then, 16, I think, and my aunt had picked me up for one of her usual weekend errands. She was redoing her front yard and wanted help picking out flowers and mulch, so we ended up at the Home Depot out in Rancho Cordova, just outside Sacramento. It wasn't our regular store, but she liked the outdoor garden section better there, so it was bigger, easier to find things. The day was pretty normal. Bright, kind of windy. Not a lot of people around. Just the usual shoppers with carts full of soil or stacks of pavers. We were in the outdoor section, checking out some geraniums and hanging planters. She was focused on the sizes and sunlight requirements, and I got bored and started wandering between the rows. My name's Aaron, by the way. I get distracted easily, especially when there are animals around, and that's exactly what happened. I spotted this scrappy little tabby darting under a shelf of petunias. I don't know if it was a store cat or just a random stray, but it made my brain switch tracks instantly. I kind of jogged after it, not really thinking. I just wanted to see if I could pet it. I followed it around a couple corners before it vanished somewhere under a display card. I knelt down, tried to coax it out, but it was gone. After a few minutes, I stood up, brushed off my jeans, and turned back toward where I thought my aunt had been. She wasn't there anymore. I didn't panic. I figured she had just gone to pay or moved to the mulch section. I started heading back toward the main checkout area, half looking for her, half retracing my steps. That's when I saw him. A man, probably in his late 30s or early 40s, was standing near the edge of a potted tree display. He had two medium-sized dogs on leashes, some kind of shepherd mixes, tan with black snouts. As I got closer, we made eye contact, and I gave a small smile like I usually do when people look my way. He smiled back and said, "You like dogs?" "Yeah," I said, slowing a little. "They're cute. You can pet them if you want," he said, nodding toward them. The dogs looked calm enough, and we were still in public, kind of in the open, so I figured why not. Maya was still somewhere close. It didn't feel unsafe. Not yet. I knelt down and pet them one at a time. Their fur was a little dusty but soft. They seemed nice, quiet, not hyper. I stood up after a second and gave him a polite nod. He didn't walk away. Instead, he asked, "How old are you?" I paused. My instinct was to lie, but I didn't. 16, I said, hoping it would make him drop whatever he was about to say next. It didn't. He smiled again, and there was something different in it now. It felt like he thought we were in on some kind of joke together. 16, huh? He repeated, like he needed to hear it out loud. He started asking questions. What school did I go to? Was I from around here? Did I work or to study? I gave vague answers, trying not to be rude, but also not wanting to feed him details. The conversation wasn't aggressive, but it wasn't right either. He had this way of standing too close without actually stepping in, like he was waiting for me to let my guard down. I started inching backward, trying to make it subtle, smiling less, looking past him. I couldn't see my aunt anymore. The cashier was blocked by a tall display of mulch bags. I was maybe 5 or 6 feet away from him now, trying to work out how to end the interaction. That's when he said, "Hey, you want to see something cool?" He tilted his head toward the far corner of the outdoor section. I glanced that way. Rows of tall plants and stacked bricks. No one else around. It was the one blind spot I had passed earlier when chasing the cat. Quiet, a little too tucked away. I didn't answer. He took a step toward that direction. "Come on," he said. "It's just over here. The dog does this trick. It's weird. You like it?" I froze. He was smiling like this was supposed to be funny, but there was nothing in me that wanted to laugh. Something was off. Very off. I took a step back. "Oh, I actually gotta go. My ride's here," I said quickly, trying to sound casual. He took another step. "No, it'll just take a second." "No, sorry," I said louder. "I really have to go." He didn't chase or yell. He just stood there, still holding the leashes, still smiling. "It's right over here," he said again, quieter this time. The dogs didn't pull toward anything. They stood completely still, like they'd been trained not to move unless he did. I turned and walked fast, too fast to play it cool, until I reached the gate to the outdoor section and scanned a parking lot. I finally spotted my aunt a few rows over, loading bags into the truck. I practically jogged to her. She looked up and raised an eyebrow. "What's up? You okay?" I told her what happened, quickly. Her expression changed instantly. She closed the trunk hard and scanned the area. Was he still there? I didn't look back. We got in the car and pulled out. I pressed myself into the passenger seat, trying not to shake. My aunt kept her eyes on the mirrors. As we pulled away, I turned just enough to check the outdoor section again. I saw him, still standing there near the plants. But now he was alone. The dogs were gone. I don't know what his intention was. Maybe it really was just a trick with the dog. Maybe he was awkward. Maybe I overreacted. But no normal adult man asks a teenager to follow him behind tall plants, just for a second, while keeping them isolated and out of sight. What really messed with me later was how normal it all felt at first. I didn't even realize I was in a dangerous spot until it was nearly too late. That's what scares me. The way danger can look like kindness, or curiosity, or just someone offering to let you pet their dog. That night, I kept imagining what might have happened if I hadn't walked away. If I'd followed him. If he turned down one of the rows with no cameras and no people. I remembered something my mom always told me growing up. Predators don't come with fangs. They come with charm. I think about that now every time I'm alone in public. I still smile when people make eye contact. It's just how I'm wired. But now if someone like that ever shows up again, I won't feel bad about walking away without a word. Or yelling if I have to. And I won't ever follow someone just because they say, "It's right over here." Not again.